Let's start and get into some of the big news that we have over the course of the week, and that is the Steelers trading Kenny Pickett to Philadelphia, which was in and of itself sort of opened the door, and I think a lot of people started stacking the bricks of logic there to figure out that that was going to lead to another move. It did lead to another move because the Steelers basically kick out Kenny Pickett and they bring in Justin Fields. So as you loop all of that together, what was your initial reaction, Frank?
My first one is from the Kenny Pickett side of things, and from all accounts, especially Jerry Dulac of the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette, it sounded like Pickett really handled a lot of things poorly in the past few months. He didn't handle being demoted behind Mason Rudolph when Mason Rudolph was hot. He didn't handle that well. He did not handle the Russell Wilson signing very well. And so the Steelers, like, whatever. What are you entitled to? Get out of here. You haven't really done enough to act like this. They ship him off to Philly, and I think the irony of it, Kenny Pickett's best chance to kind of reestablish himself as a bona fide starting quarterback in the NFL was in Pittsburgh. Russell Wilson was just on a one-year deal. He's got $1.2 million. They owe nothing to him. There's all this talk, and we'll talk about this in a little bit when we get to the second move. All this talk about, oh, Tomlin has promised him he's going to start and blah, blah, blah. That does not matter at all. They have, again, $1.2 million invested in him for 1 year. If Kenny Pickett would have outplayed him in August, Kenny Pickett would have started, and the Steelers would have been ecstatic about that. And Russell Wilson's feelings would have been hurt, but the Steelers would have said, whatever, Russ, you're gone next year anyway. What do we care? Our 2022 first-round pick is back in the saddle, and we're excited about that. Instead, Kenny Pickett kind of throws a fit, gets himself traded to Philly, where he has absolutely no chance to start over the next 2 years unless Jalen Hurts gets hurt. And then his rookie contract's over, and there's where does he go from there? I thought this was pretty much career suicide for Kenny Pickett. He's going to have that long road back to become a starter in the NFL, whereas he sticks around Pittsburgh. If he doesn't beat Russell Wilson out this season, Russ is on a one-year deal. You could be the team starter in 2025 if you have a good attitude about all this. I just think Kenny Pickett screwed this up pretty bad, and now he's kind of in this backup purgatory in Philly. And if all things go right for the Eagles the next couple of years, we won't see Kenny Pickett take a snap until 2026.
Your breakdown on this is really smart because I feel like what it did is it took Kenny Pickett from the category he's been in, which is can he ascend to become a reasonable starter, and it put him into the new category he's going to be in, I think, for the rest of his career. And that's need a backup. Kenny Pickett's going to come in.
Right.
Like Kenny Pickett can play for another 10 years.
Again, right?
100%. And the hope was supposed to be bigger than that. Now, it's never in my mind a player's fault that they're overdrafted. So it's not Kenny Pickett's fault that the Steelers took him in the first round. I thought it was a reach when they drafted him. Pretty on record with that. I've been on record through that the whole time. I don't think he was ever supposed to really be the franchise-saving quarterback. But that being said, I'm surprised to see the player really be willing to just give up on that, especially at this point and at this value. They still have time. They still could have figured out the money aspect is a good part of this too. So now he goes to a spot where, to your point, he's buried. Like he's just, not only is he, so what, preseason? We're going to get a few preseason games a year to suddenly figure out if Kenny Pickett has a future in this league. Like I feel like he put himself in the sort of situation where Kenny Pickett is not only going to become a permanent backup, he's going to become the hardest thing to get out of, which is forgotten. Like the league's not even going to think of Kenny Pickett. And somebody at some point, I think there could have still been legs somewhere else for him to have a shot to start, but not anymore.
Be a professional, Kenny. You're not entitled to anything. If you would have played better, nobody would have gotten, the Steelers wouldn't have even thought about Russell Wilson. You didn't play that well. That's why you're in this situation. Take something on your shoulders. Don't think you're entitled to anything. Don't you think you're entitled just to get your job back when Mason Rudolph's playing well late last season. Don't think you're entitled to start over a 9-time Pro Bowler. I know Russ has had his issues the last couple of years, but for Kenny Pickett to come in and throw a fit, I guess, reportedly, over Russell Wilson being signed apparently to start ahead of him, well, Russell Wilson's been a better quarterback than you. If you'd have played better, you wouldn't be in this spot.
I think it's important to note here, because you said reportedly, and yes, it's just reports that he pitched a fit. If he didn't pitch a fit, why get rid of him now? What was the benefit? Unless the Steelers just wanted to bring in Justin Fields, which is the other part of this equation. But through all of this, I think the one commonality between what the Bears did and what the Steelers did is I'm looking at it saying, why now? Like, there's not enough talented quarterbacks in the NFL. We know that. We're going to get into the summer, and God forbid, but somebody's going to get hurt somewhere. You're telling me that the best value that there was going to be for Kenny Pickett, the Steelers got a 98 and 2 2025 7th-round picks. Newsflash, we all know this. Like, 7th-round picks barely even make the roster. So, essentially, this was Kenny Pickett for a 98 and 2 Hail Marys. Like that. You couldn't have gotten better than that in June, which is what we're about to get to with Justin Fields too. But I think that speaks to the fact that the Steelers knew they had to unload him. Like, it's just, hey, I don't care where you go, but you can't be here.
Right. And I do wonder if the Justin Fields thing was already in the works, because to me, we'll talk about Justin in a second. I'm not out on Justin Fields. I think Justin Fields is a good player. Like, he's got flaws. There's no doubt about it. But if you're asking me, pick a quarterback, Kenny Pickett, Justin Fields. Why are we even having this question? Of course I'm picking Justin Fields. There's no doubt in my mind. I think the Steelers really came out on the right side. Like, they came out looking pretty good here, to whereas before this all happened, you wondered what their end game was. You got Russ for a year. I guess signed him to an extension if he plays okay. He's going to be 37 in 2025. Where Pickett doesn't seem like the answer. Whereas now you say, whatever happens in 2024, whether it's Russ, whether it's Fields, you got options now. Fields might be your quarterback of the future. We'll see about that. But I thought the Steelers played this really, really well and didn't give up anything. Again, $1.2 million for Russ is nothing. What they gave up draft-wise for Fields, very, very little. I really, I'm kind of impressed with how the Steelers played this. It might not end up solving your quarterback situation, but you didn't pay anything to find out either. Really well done by Steelers front office.
Yeah, no, the Steelers absolutely robbed the Bears in every possible way. And I've heard a lot of people say, well, the league obviously didn't think that Justin Fields could play because there weren't that many suitors. I want to clarify that, because I don't think that's true at all. The one thing teams understand in the NFL better than anything is leverage, right? So the minute that everybody understood Chicago, which after Indy, I think it became clear, was definitely going quarterback at number one, what does that mean? It means they lost any shot at any leverage in a trade conversation. So if you know that Justin Fields isn't going to be part of the team, you're not running up to the podium and suddenly offering a second-round pick for him. Like, they diluted their own trade value by doing it when they did it. That's on the Bears. And I don't think what he was traded for is representative of Justin Fields. It's representative of a bad business deal by the Bears. They should have either traded him earlier, or they should have waited until close to the season, seen what they could have gotten from it. But you can't tell me that a 6th-round pick that might become a 4th-round pick is really worth it when you talk about the insurance that Justin Fields would have had. Worst case scenario, he stays on the roster. You still have a backup quarterback, which we learned last year every team needs to have anyway. So I thought this was a questionable move by Chicago for the value they got, and not a statement of Justin Fields at all.
Right. I agree and disagree with you. The part I disagree with is it's one of the rare cases where I'm always part of this. Why do we care so much about the feelings of the starting quarterback? Well, you need to get good at that position. And if your backup is going to challenge him a little bit, your QB1 should be able to handle that. In this particular situation, I don't think the Bears could have kept Justin Fields around. It would have just been so awkward for Caleb Williams' development to have a guy who the locker room has they supported him publicly last year. A lot of their fans really, really like Justin Fields and where he was going. He is a former 1st-round pick. He has the experience. All of a sudden, it makes life a little uncomfortable for Caleb Williams. Not that that's always a bad thing, but the Bears are all in on this Caleb Williams thing. They need a franchise quarterback. They haven't had an all-pro quarterback on the first team since Sid Luck, or not even, it was Johnny Lujack in 1950. They need to get Caleb Williams to start him. And I don't think you do that by having this weird situation where, hey, Caleb, welcome to the team. Here's Justin Fields. He's going to be sitting in the quarterback room next to you. We're trying to trade him, but we're going to see. Like, it was just going to be such a bad situation that I think the Bears had, they were just stuck in a situation where you got to trade him, get whatever you can. We just can't have this guy around. It just makes life too difficult. I do agree with you that backup quarterback's very valuable. What if something happens to Caleb? Or, maybe you do hold on to Justin for a while. Just have him be away from the facility and trade him when somebody gets hurt. But I do think the Bears wanted to do right by Fields too, and that was part of this.
Look, I love the thought of doing right. And if that's really what happened here, I'll never fault everybody for doing right for the player. But what you're saying right now is every indication that the Bears don't have the right head coach then. Because
I don't know.
Be very
it's
clear.
Tough, Fitz.
Wait. But think about it. When the Chiefs drafted Mahomes, they were coming off of a playoff season with Alex Smith, right? Like, they were coming off playoff caliber football with Alex Smith. There had to have been players in that locker room that were like, I don't know about this. And as we've talked about before, when they decided after a big year to move on from Alex Smith and to put Mahomes in that role, plenty of people looked around and said, man, Andy Reid has lost his damn mind. At some point, the expectation of who's going to play and running an entire locker room comes down to who's establishing your culture. And if Eberflus had established a culture where everybody in that locker room genuinely believed he was the smartest guy in the room, they genuinely looked at Eberflus and said, man, I don't understand what he's doing, but I know this guy's a genius, so it's going to work out. If they really had that level of respect for him, I don't care if you put Bozo the Clown in there. It's still going to work. To me, this says everything about the culture of the organization.
It could a little bit, but I just think it was too difficult of a situation. And the Chiefs situation is a reasonable comp. I think the difference between that and, Favre and Rodgers and Love and all those other ones is that an older quarterback who's on his way out. And this guy's going to take over at a certain point. You're talking about Justin Fields, 24, I believe he is, where it's still this question of what is he in the future. I just think it was going to be too awkward, and it really doesn't help Caleb Williams' development to have Justin Fields around. It just, and that I don't know if any coach really could have handled that well. I mean, maybe a Belichick, a Tomlin. I mean, some of these really, really top end coaches maybe could have handled that situation, but Chicago is a crazy football town. There's going to be stories every day about every time Caleb Williams struggled in a preseason game or even in a training camp practice or whatever. It's going to be like, well, what do? You got Justin Fields still. It is just, I didn't like that situation for the Bears at all. And I think they just had to do what they had to do, and they got what they could for Fields. And nobody's probably happy about that in Chicago, but you're rid of that problem, and now you can go forward to Caleb.